Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning for in this webinar on managing the testing beyond a test management tool by Robin Goldsmith. Many of you who are attending with us today, I'm sure you have seen the name in many places. Robin is very recognized expert in software engineering, software management, test management, and many other things that I would not have time to list here in this webinar. We are very proud to have Robin Goldsmith also as a senior instructor of the International Institute for Software Testing. He's been with the Institute since it started back in 1999. Robin also has been in the field of software and software management and quality management and requirement management. He's also the author of a very nice book on requirement management. He can share this with you. Without further ado, I'd like to give the microphone to Robin so that we can enjoy his experience on the topic. Robin, thank you so much for being with us. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Magdi. Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well in spite of all of the challenges that our environment seems to be giving us these days. So some of you know me, just a few things to let you know a little bit more about me, that I do work with and train business and project professionals to get the right results right. And we do that with regard to a variety of areas, including quality assurance and testing and requirements and software acquisition, project and process management, metrics, and return on investment. Once upon a time, I did honest work. I was a programmer and a systems programmer and project leader, and been a consultant for a number of years, have several degrees. I've been a member of several IEEE standard working groups. In fact, I'm currently very active in one on software acquisition, a subject expert for IBA's Business Analysis Body of Knowledge version 2, search software qualities. TechTarget.com. Magdi mentioned I am the author of a book called Discovering Real Business Requirements for Software Project Success, and a forthcoming book called Cut Creep, Write Agile User Stories and Acceptance Tests. And today's webinar is a preview for a full-day course called Managing the Test Project that will be presenting live online on Tuesday, September 28th, all day. And it is one of 4 classes, each of which by itself provides considerable value. But if you take all 4 of them and pass the certification exam for each one that we give at the end of the class, that will qualify you to earn the Certified Software Test Lead certification. I'll point out that you can also take recorded on-demand classes. We have a number of them, including the 4 that are part of the CSTL and a number of others as well. And of course, we do like to work directly with you. We can come to your site or work virtually to help you with quality assurance and testing and requirements, whether it's training or consulting. So we've got a variety of ways that we can work with you to help you. Now, what I'd like you to do is please share with us and type it into the questions box, and Magdi will read those. Any issues that you have or objectives. What is it that brought you to this particular webinar? What is it that you're hoping to get from it? what are your questions, your concerns. So please, if you would, share those in the questions box, and Magdi will monitor that, and we'll give people a couple of seconds to do that. I know that sometimes people are shy. Sometimes it takes longer to type things than we might want to sit and wait for. But please, if you would, put your objectives, your issues, your concerns, your reasons for attending, what you hope to get out of this class in the questions box. And you'll get more as you participate more. You'll get more value and benefit out of this and other online training and any training as you participate more. And if you help us know what you're interested in and concerned about, then I'm going to have a better opportunity to try to shape some of the discussion toward the areas that you identify. So Magdi, have we gotten any?
No, not at this point. The questions banner is empty in front of me, but until we receive something, let me throw in, if you allow me, I've actually hear one. Olga say,
Okay.
our team does not consistently use the testware management tools yet. I still need to manage that testware. Looking forward to some hints. Okay, so they're not using the tools consistently, so but she still want to manage it. The process need to be managed no matter what. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Now that there are many reasons why a team might not use the tools. One of the most likely ones is that they don't have sufficient familiarity with the tools to know how to use them confidently. But what's probably more common and less often recognized is that people don't understand sufficiently about their testing process to understand how a tool might fit into it. You know, it's hard to know that, but those are two areas to consider, and we'll try to address both of those to some extent. Got anything else there, Magdi?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Well, let me share with you what I see as the objectives for today. And let's see, first of all, if these make sense. Secondly, if they seem reasonable for why you're here. And third, if they have anything to do with why you are here. So we want you to be able to identify some common capabilities and limitations of test management tools. We want you to be able to describe some added benefits of managing testing as a project as opposed to managing it as an activity, which in my experience is what most organizations do. And we want you to be able to better apply project management methods to testing and the unique challenges that testing has, so that by applying project management methods, you can actually go beyond what a test management tool by itself can provide. So we've got another opportunity for you to enter into the questions box. You know, what does test management mean to you? What does it include? And if necessary or if helpful, what doesn't it include? Okay. So if you would, please put that into the questions box. And once again, Magdi will read that to us, and may take a few seconds for people to provide their answers. Yeah.
Well, don't have anything yet, but I'm glad you're asking this question, Robin, because it's been always interesting to see that what most people think that managing testing simply means keeping a track of the test cases and their execution and who executed what and how many we done, how many is left, and that's it. A lot of people, many people take a very simplistic approach to test management, and that's why I'm sure we're learning more from you here today.
Okay, and I agree with you that that's a very common perception about what test management is, and in fact, test management can include that, but as you've hinted, there may well be some other things, but those are things that test management tools often are aimed at. Do we have any other
Not at this point.
ideas?
No. Oh, here you
Okay.
go. Here you go. Another one. Um, Someone says to me, and I, of course, as you know, I avoid to mention names just in case. So to me, test management includes being able to follow a case through requirement traceability, on through execution, and being able to quickly find what cases are missing.
Okay. So find what's missing. Okay. Good. Anything else?
Nope, not so far.
Okay. Well, good. So we've got a couple of descriptions there. This is information from an article called "The Top 20 Best Test Management Tools," and so this article says that things that test management tools do is they create and maintain information about project releases and project cycles and components. So identifying the various things that might pertain to our testing and creating and maintaining the test artifacts. And that's similar to what Magdi just said, and relating them to the various releases or test cycles, and tying them back as the participant indicated, tracing them back to requirements and test cases and so forth. Traceability, coverage of those various test assets is a major part of many test management tools. Supporting the execution of tests, creating test suites. Test suites are typically groups of tests that are run together, and actually executing those tests and capturing the status of those tests and so forth. And based upon capturing various measures and status and defects and so forth, turning those into metrics and reports, graphing and so forth, so that people can analyze what's going on. And a big part of test management is often the bug tracking and defect management. So these are things that, if you look at them, they all make sense. They're all things that typically are done within testing. And notice that they are all things that are pretty mechanical. In other words, they're ways to assist creation and execution and analysis, but they don't by themselves identify what to test or analyze the results and things like that, but they assist it. And so let's just kind of tie these things together. So big part of it is creating and storing and accessing and updating test cases. And part of that then is putting those test cases together into suites or runs so that the tests are actually executed, and these tests are often executed in some kind of an automated fashion, although there are many test management tools that also support manual testing. Okay. But the capturing of the information can facilitate both automated or manual test execution, capturing the results, and then that can lead to analyzing and reporting those results. And ordinarily, there's some feedback into the set of test cases based upon what's happened. Okay. We look for analysis of defects and report on them. And based upon that analysis of defects, that can go back and lead us to update or modify or add to the test cases and possibly the ways in which we're executing the tests, and possibly the ways in which we're capturing our results. So once again, all things considered, a mechanical set of activities, things that take humans a lot of time and effort to do, and so using a tool to do it can cut down on some of the effort. Okay. But what else is there besides this? So let's look at testing in a possibly different way from the way that you're accustomed to looking at testing. That is, I want you to think of testing as a project, which in turn is a sub-project within the overall development project. And the reason that we want to do this is because looking at testing as a project can give us some perspectives and some abilities that we might not get if we just view testing as an activity. And just to refresh your understanding, those of you who are familiar with the project management body of knowledge, you know that it defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. And a project is unique, even though it may be very similar to a project that we've done previously. But there are certain things that are going to be unique about each project. Projects, by definition, have a beginning and an end. Projects produce deliverables, and the fact that there may be things that are repeated doesn't change the uniqueness of the project work. So if you think about your experience with projects, I want you to think back, think about what are the things that characterize the best projects that you've been involved with? What are the things that characterize the worst projects that you've been involved with? Now, as you're thinking about that, I'm going to identify some things that participants in webinars and classes like this previously have mentioned. Way up on top is clear requirements and management support, enough time and resources, good communications, taking responsibility, accurate plans, and teamwork, and that things are available when they're needed, and so forth. And some of the things that tend to characterize the worst projects, see if any of these ring true to you. Micromanagement, bickering, unclear roles, people don't follow through. The work that gets done is often poor quality, often because people don't really have a good idea what to do. If you don't have a good idea what to do, you shouldn't be surprised if people on the project may not have suitable or adequate skills. Very often projects go south because they either don't have the tools that they need, or they're saddled with tools that are not appropriate. And I think a lot of people are experienced with projects where people on the project get pulled away to other projects, and that can really do a number on your ability. Now, a lot of people just look to the best projects column and say, lack of clear requirements, lack of management support, and so forth. And those are also all true. Now, what tends not to get mentioned is what, in my experience, is the most important factor in project success. And that is the project manager. And for a testing project, the project manager of the testing project is typically called a test manager. Now, I would guess that these characteristics of best and worst projects are pretty much fit with your own experiences. And I'll just caution you to ask, what do tools have to do with this? Because I think you'll find that tools by themselves do not create these things that create the best project, and the tools, or lack thereof, don't by themselves make the project go bad. So when we think of testing as a project, we can look at things in different ways and realize that simply knowing how to test is necessary but not sufficient for the testing to provide needed value. And that within the project management world, there's a very widely used triangle, often called the project manager's triangle. Some people call it the iron triangle. Some people refer to it as triple constraints. The gist of it is that there are three variables: the product, which is a combination of the functionality and the quality together, because if you don't have sufficient quality, then the functionality will not in fact be delivered, and therefore the product will come up short. Cost, which is driven by resources, and time in terms of schedule. And some of you probably familiar with the phrase quality, cost, schedule, pick two. There are a lot of people who are purported to be gurus who say things like this, thinking that it makes them sound smart, and in fact it doesn't. Okay? Because the fact is that your organization wants quality, cost, and schedule, not 2 out of 3. And anybody who tells you that 2 out of 3 is good enough is setting you up for failure. If you hear that from somebody, get as far away from them as you can, because they are leading you astray. So the real meaning of the project manager's triangle is that a project manager has only 3 types of variables. And that's the product, the cost, and the time. And that in order to improve one of the variables, in other words, say to produce better product, you don't accomplish that directly. You accomplish that by adjusting one or both of the other 2 variables. So the typical thing is geez, if we want better product, better quality, let's add resources, let's add time. Okay, of course, that seldom happens. Similarly, if we need to cut the cost, the most likely thing is that people cut functionality and quality. Similarly, if you want to deliver quicker, people tend to do a knee-jerk reaction of reducing functionality, reducing quality. Okay. Now, everything needs to be accomplished because people need suitable product within available cost and time or deadline. And the other element that's lurking in the background here is risk. So if we make a change to product or time or cost, that impacts risk. By the way, if we don't change things, then there are also risks that we're going to end up where we don't want to be. So risk is something that affects how we will deal with these three variables. Now, if you've ever read or taken a project management course or read anything on project management, it's pretty likely that it highlighted planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. Okay? And two things about this. One is that there is a fifth key competency that is seldom mentioned, and that's administering. That is, you actually need to do the work of managing the project. And one of the places that projects fail is that the project manager has not provided himself or herself suitable time and resources and skills to actually manage the project. And when the project doesn't get managed because there's inadequate administration, the project is going to fail. Now, tools do not plan for you or organize or direct or control or administer, but they can help you do the administering of the planning, the organizing, the directing, and controlling, and ultimately save some time and help avoid overlooking things. And what we also need to realize is that there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into project management: leading, delegating, negotiating, analyzing, designing, developing and implementing stuff, okay, and representing. The project manager represents the organization to the team and represents the team to the organization. And because of that, project management is in many ways the most difficult job, because project managers are really catching it from all directions. Once again, a tool does not do any of this stuff, but tools can help with the busy work, the effort involved in doing these various competencies. So in my when I train on project management and areas like this and test management, one of the things that I do is identify a number of reasons that projects turn out to disappoint. And those represent what are called critical success factors. So critical success factors are things that need to be present in order for you to succeed. If they are not present, you will fail. If they are present, then you have an opportunity to succeed. So they are necessary but not sufficient. And in my analysis, the top critical success factor for projects, the top reason why projects fail, is a lack of commitment to delivering results. Now, when I say this, it is very often misunderstood. Okay? A lot of people think that I'm saying that they don't care. And they say, but I do care. Okay? And that when people say, oh no, this isn't true, then they deny anything related to it. Now, I'll encourage you to step back and reserve judgment, because lack of commitment to delivering results is really something different. Okay? It's not an issue of whether you care. It's not how conscientious you are. It's not how hard you work. Those are all givens. Okay? But rather, commitment to delivering results is what is needed to overcome obstacles, to persevere so that you in fact deliver the results rather than delivering excuses. And I'm sure you're all familiar with people on your projects who, whenever anything goes wrong, they've always got an excuse for it. They're always delivering excuses. Now, commitment to delivering results. Results means quality. Remember, quality means functionality as well as how well things are done. So, results are what the client needs, what the client wants, what the client expects, and they need to get it in a manner that satisfies all the relevant stakeholders, internal and external customers, including management, maybe other stakeholders, standards if you have those that guide what you do, other participants, and the project manager. And so we're delivering results on time and within budget. And so when we look at how this actually plays out, we find that the project manager plans, organizes, directs, controls, and administers people, resources, time, tools, and risk into a set of methods and requirements that, taken together, produce a set of tasks, which in turn produce a set of deliverables, which taken together achieve the goals. So the project manager is planning, organizing, directing, controlling, and administering people, resources, time, tools, and risk to do relevant tasks to produce relevant deliverables that in turn satisfy the goals. When we are managing projects, we need to look at this differently. That is, we need to start by identifying the goals, identify the set of deliverables that will satisfy those goals, identify the set of tasks that will bring together the methods and requirements to produce those deliverables to satisfy the goals. So this is a key technique, is identifying the end and working backwards. And what we find is that a project manager in general has a set of deliverables, roughly broken into plan and execution of the plan. And a test manager, the manager of a testing project, has a similar plan and execution, except that the things pertain only to the testing project. Tools, once again, can help prompt you. They can help capture this information. Okay? But they're not going to tell you specifically what your plan should consist of, and they're not going to specifically tell you or enable you to execute that project, but they can assist it, give you a place for capturing test cases and executing test cases and capturing defects and reporting on them and so forth. Now, I'm going to suggest that the test manager has a tougher job than the project manager. And I already said the project manager's job is the toughest one around. So why does the test manager's job, why is that tougher than the project manager job? Okay. Why, in fact, does a test manager have to do better work than a project manager does? And the project manager's work really determines the overall success of the project. So if you would, please put in the questions box, why is it that I say a test manager has to do better than the project manager? So if you would, put that into the questions box. And Magdi, if you'll keep an eye on that and share with us, why does the test manager have to do better than a project manager? And the project manager has to do well for the project to succeed. So why is the challenge even greater for a test manager than for a project manager? By the way, you'd think, well, then the test manager ought to get paid more than the project manager. And of course, that doesn't happen either. So you got an answer there, Magdi?
Not from the audience, not yet. But I'll just throw something in. Most test managers will tell you my job is much tougher than a project manager because I have to do all that stuff and I am not in control of anything. Project managers normally controls everything, controls the schedule, controls when things need to be done, and the test manager is not in control, but yet they have to perform.
Okay. And that's a part of it. There's actually a simpler explanation. It's, you might say it's cynical, but the fact is that if the project manager messes up, they can blame other people, including the test manager. If the test manager messes up, they don't have anyone else to blame. Okay. So project managers actually have ways to hide. Test managers are the end of the line. They don't have that opportunity. Okay. And indeed, part of that is that they don't have the control, as you suggested. Now, most projects fail to meet their budget and schedule because their budget and schedule is nonsense. The budget and schedule is often defined without meaningful information about what's really needed. And all things considered, if the boss imposes upon you a budget and schedule that's impossible to meet, which often happens, and you fail to meet it, the boss is also going to fail. So why would a boss create conditions that almost certainly make the project fail, which in turn makes the boss fail? Okay. That's kind of a paradox, isn't it? Well, So very often the boss is stepping back and saying, well, I'm just passing along something that somebody else told me. There's some kind of a business requirement, a legal requirement, whatever. It's very common that bosses impose unrealistic budgets and schedules because they don't understand the work. They don't understand the need for testing. They don't understand what's involved in testing, so they think it seems simple, that any idiot can do it. And very often, bosses create test budgets and schedules in what I call a double whammy rule of thumb. That is, they take an estimate of the development budget and schedule and then provide some fraction of that for testing. The problem is that their estimates of the development budget and schedule are also way off. So if they have underestimated what it's going to take to build this thing, and they take a fraction of that for testing, they're still going to be way off. Now, there's a pretty good chance that the testers, have tried to make their case, for how much testing is really needed. And whether you like it or not, if somebody doesn't buy what you sell them, it's pretty likely it's because they don't believe what you're saying. Now, to some extent, I think testers, if they look back at the way things happen, you look back candidly, I think a lot of testers will recognize that sometimes we are not really nearly so clear as we think we are about why something should be done, what needs to be done, how it should be done, and what it will take. But there's another thing that we tend not to recognize, and that is that very often we are basing our points about the importance and time and budget and so forth required for testing. We're basing them on assumptions about the importance of testing and what's done, what needs to be done, how to do it. And those assumptions are not shared by the boss. And very often, all that we say to support our points are, don't you care about quality? And we're implying that if the boss doesn't do what we tell them to do, that it means they don't care about quality. But every boss in the world, if you ask him, is going to say, of course I care about quality. And so if somebody says, but boss, this means you don't care about quality, the boss is going to react negatively to that. And they're going to pretty much close their mind to everything else that we say. So, So, why do bosses cut your estimates? Well, there is this perception, and it's actually based on a lot of sound experience, that left to their own devices, engineers always say they don't have enough time, and you give them more time, they still never finish. And so bosses say, they ask for more time. I know that. I've heard that. It's a broken record. Okay. And I'm not going to give them more time, because if I give them more time, the only thing that happens is that they spend more time not finishing. A lot of bosses think that providing demanding budgets and schedules somehow is motivating when, of course, it's often not. And here's a little secret. Bosses know the trick that many people use in creating estimates. That is, you say, well, how much time do I think it's going to take? I think it's going to take a month. I will ask for 2 months. And the bosses know that trick, so that when we ask for 2 months, they cut it in half because they think we're padding it. So they're back to the 1 month. Okay. And ultimately, the bosses are challenging Parkinson's law. Some of you may be familiar with that. Parkinson's law says that work expands to fill the available time, and that if I give you 2 months, the only thing I'm certain of is that you will take 2 months, but that it's highly unlikely that you will produce appreciably different results in 2 months than you would have in the 1 month. So how about I just hold you to the 1 month? Now, the other piece that we tend not to appreciate is that if the boss thinks that we don't have any real idea what's going on or what's going to be required, then the boss's guess is just as good as our guess. Okay? I mean, after all, this is important. The boss's career depends upon it. Would they rather rely on themselves or rely on us? And they're pretty sure we don't know what we're talking about. And that, unfortunately, there's a lot of truth in this, and we seldom recognize it. So consider, let's say that you were going to take a flight. Now, I happen to live in Boston. Magdi's down in San Diego. So let's say that I'm going to fly from Boston to San Diego. I go to the airline and I say, how long will it take for me to get from Boston to San Diego? And they say, the airline says, well, you can catch a flight that leaves at 7 in the morning in Boston, and we'll get to San Diego 6 hours later, but because of the time zones, that's going to be 4 o'clock in the afternoon in San Diego time. Now, would I say, hey, airline, that's too long. Get me there quicker? No, I don't argue with the airline. Why don't I argue with the airline? Because I know that the airline knows how long it takes to get from Boston to San Diego, and they know when their planes take off and when they're going to land. And how do I know that they know it? Because they do it every day, possibly several times a day. Okay? So the gist of it is that you don't argue with people when you believe that they know what they're talking about. Conversely, if somebody argues with you, that's a tip-off that they don't think you know what you're talking about. Now, it's very common that estimates and estimators say things like, can't be done. You want me to do this in 1 month, can't be done. Okay. And the problem is that while we think we're being professional and responsible, what's heard on the other end is that I am promising you that I will not deliver what you want. And that makes us part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And what we don't recognize, and this is a critical thing, is that when we are thinking in terms of why things won't happen, that prevents us from finding ways to actually make them happen. So if we're going to have credibility, we have to start with a successful end. We have to know what's needed, how to make full delivery happen, what actions are needed and when in order to produce the results, and what it will take in order to carry out those actions, so that we in fact are managing by facts. Okay. So if we can say, here's how it can be done, and this is what it will take to do it, now we're handing the power over to the boss, to the company, to the organization. We're saying, if we do this, it will in fact deliver the results. Now, that's intellectually half of it. The other half is emotion. And that is, not only can it be done, but will I in fact make it happen? If you are committed to delivering the results, that's what opens you to seeing ways to succeed. And if you're not committed to delivering the results, then you only see ways to fail. So, commitment to delivering results is the top critical success factor. It's not caring, just caring or working hard. Both are necessary. Projects succeed or fail in the first 15 minutes because they succeed or fail in the mind of the project manager. Now, we plan so we'll succeed. Old saying, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. There are 6 reasons why we plan. We identify what to do, how to do it, and what it will take. And the reason that we do that is so that we will have what we need when we need it. That we can then guide our execution based upon that plan and use that as a basis for identifying the need for and the nature of important adjustments. Okay. Tools help us do that, but they don't do the thinking for us, but they can do the heavy work, the grunt work. Testing is our main method of reducing risks. So, simple relationship, the more risks, the more testing we need to do. Okay? And we can analyze, identify and analyze the risks at each level of planning, design, and execution. So, we need to identify business impact and management factors. Those are parts of the risk. Those things give us an overall level or amount of testing that's needed, but they don't specifically point to the particular tests that we need. Traditional testing, which I call reactive testing, looks at the features that are being built and the components, the way that they are being built, analyzes the risks of each, prioritizes and tests the riskier ones more. Okay. There are 2 problems with that. One is that it misses a lot of stuff, and the other is that it tends to come too late. When we use what I call proactive testing, which we discuss further in our course, okay, proactive testing anticipates and prioritizes, and it does it level by level of the planning and design process. And because we're anticipating, not only can we test the highest risks more, but we can also test the highest risks earlier. Traditional reactive testing, the analysis and testing occurs too late to do things early. So proactive testing can provide much more benefit. Okay? So we make a distinction between test plans, which are project plans for the testing project, and the other artifacts, test designs and test cases. Test designs identify sets of executable test cases, so they're in a one-to-many relationship. Test procedures, how you carry out a given test case, are also typically in a one-to-many relationship to a set of test cases. And so we can use those one-to-many relationships to use our time more efficiently. So instead of spending a lot of time repeating stuff and duplicating effort, we focus on the one and don't repeat things over and over again. Now, we can also use tools and techniques like work breakdown structures that identify, for instance, the tasks that are typically involved in planning, designing, and executing testing. Most estimates of testing focus only on test execution. Well, test execution is only part of the overall testing effort. So there are also tasks involved in creating tests and running them and rerunning them. And test execution also involves analyzing results and reporting on defects, including isolating those defects so they can be reproduced, and physically writing defect reports and categorizing them. And a task that is often necessary but overlooked is advocating those defects. So some percentage of the defects, the bosses, the management, doesn't understand why they're important, doesn't understand why we need to run those tests, doesn't understand the impact of defects with regard to them. So there is time involved in advocating. Now, if we use this as a template to identify the tasks involved in test-driven tasks, okay, and then break those tests into groupings, for instance, simple tests, complex tests, load tests, automated tests, whatever. Tests that have similar characteristics, then we can make estimates of an individual test, effort and duration to do that, and then we do that per task. And because we've identified all these tasks that are ordinarily overlooked, our estimates are just going to be much more accurate. And then if we've made an estimate of how many tests there are of that type, then it's a pretty simple arithmetic to multiply the number of tests of that type times the time and effort to do each of the respective tasks, add them up, and that gives us a very reliable estimate of the time related to test-driven tasks. Now, the other part of estimating is that, and by the way, tools, once again, can help with the mechanics of this, but they're not going to make the estimates for us. But the other part that tends to almost always be overlooked, partly or largely because testing is treated as an activity rather than as a project, are all of these other tasks that need to be carried out in order to do testing. You know, meetings, developing test plans, creating an environment, implementing tools, training, reporting, supervising, staffing, and so forth. Okay. These typically constitute at least half, if not more, of your total time, and they're almost always invisible, and test management tools generally don't give any recognition to any of these things. So we've covered a lot of information. We've identified some tool capabilities and limitations, some benefits of managing testing as a project as opposed to managing it as an activity, and a couple of insights into some ways to apply project management methods to testing and its unique challenges to enable you to go beyond what a test management tool alone can provide. Okay. So just remind you that we have another webinar next Thursday, and that this webinar is a preview for managing the testing projects, which is part of the CSTL program. So Magdi, do we have any questions?
Not as far as I see. No.
Okay. Well, we'll give people another minute or two if you've got questions or comments or anything that you'd like me to confuse further.
Okay.
Please speak up in the questions box, and Magdi will relay them.
Okay.
And as we're doing that, I'll thank you for attending. Hope you found this helpful, and I hope to see you in next week's webinar as well as in these CSTL courses and other courses that we present. And if we can work directly with you and your group and help you in that way, we'll be delighted to do that. So,
Robin,
question?
I have no, there is no question yet, but I need to thank you in the meantime until we see a question from the audience. I have learned quite a bit from you today. I very much like what you presented close to the end of the webinar about breaking down. So what do you call it? Test-driven tasks. I have been telling people all the time. Why is it that, I mean, the same kind of example is it, why don't we argue? Why don't we argue with airlines about the duration of flights? Because we know they know what they're talking about. I always tell people, when you bring a contractor to do work in your home, most likely you are going to argue their estimates. But a smart contractor will be ready to present it to you all the tasks involved and how much each task will take, kind of educating you about how much time it really takes. So when we see this breakdown of tasks and the breakdown of efforts, we are convinced. So that's how we convince our management. Unfortunately, we know that most managers, especially in the project management end and the development side, they always ask, how much time is going to take you to test this? And when they ask this question, they're using the word test to refer to running the tests. How much is going to take you to test this? And I wish when you get this kind of question, we say, we don't just test it. We do a lot of many other things before we even started testing it. And that's why you said to many people, testing is all about test execution, which is totally wrong. Thanks again for emphasizing this.
Absolutely. So we've dumbfounded people. There's just silence. Is that right?
Except a few people are thanking you for the contents of the webinar.
Great. Well, thank you all for attending. We'll see you next week and in the September 27th through 30th courses. I hope to see you all in those as well. Good luck with this. Have a great holiday and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Let me just add at the end, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available at the IIST website sometime early next week. When you get the link to the webinar, please feel free to forward that link to your colleagues and associates. We want as many people as possible to listen to our webinars. So don't hesitate at all to forward the email you receive with the link to the recording of the webinar to other people at your company. Thank you.
Bye now.